Nashville, Noir, Chapter 15. Lanny Granger's stereo was pumping out Reba McIntyre's "I'm Gonna Take That Mountain" at an air-splitting level when I knocked on her door. "Just go on in, she'll never hear you," said a young woman wearing a backpack who rushed past me in the hall and bounded up the stairs two at a time before I had a chance to see what she looked like. I turned the knob, poked my head in, and called out, "Hello?" Mrs. Granger was vacuuming and singing along with the CD. Her dark hair was up in rollers, covered with a scarf tied behind her neck, and she had on the same pink kimono she wore the morning we first sat down to talk. I waited until she turned the vacuum cleaner in my direction, then waited to capture her attention. She motioned me in, clicked off the machine, and lowered the volume on Reba. "Sorry," she said. "I get carried away when I'm listening to music." "I understand," I said. I tried knocking. "Sorry to disturb you, but I need the key to Cindy's room." "Did you come to get her things?" she asked, crossing to the board on the wall that held keys to all the rooms. She lifted the one from the hook labeled Tammy Whitnight and handed it to me. "Yes," I said, "whatever left's there." "How she's doing?" "Considering all she's been through, not too bad. Had some guy from the Tennessean stop by yesterday, asking me all sorts of questions about her. Told me she got out of jail. That was a pretty piece of work you and the lawyer pulled off. Read about it in the paper this morning. The judge is letting her stay with me at the hotel, pending the grand jury proceedings. Once that's over, the court will reconsider whether she can remain out of jail, but she's not allowed to leave the hotel other than for special circumstances. Since we don't know where she'll end up, I thought it best to collect her belongings. We discussed it and agreed that we didn't want to delay you in case you found another tenant for her room. Appreciate that." "Not that I have anyone in mind right now," she said, tucking a wayward strand of hair under her scarf. "But this old house is my income as well as my home. I like to keep it filled up." "Naturally. Are the police sure she's the actual killer? She's such a skinny thing. You wouldn't think she had the strength to lift that big award, much less bash someone's head in with it." I winced at the image. "They're going forward with the case," I said. "So I have to assume they believe she's guilty. But I'm hoping to prove them wrong." I put my hand on the doorknob. "I won't keep you any longer. Would you like me just to put the key back on the board when I'm finished?" "That'll be fine. You say hi to her for me now." "I'll do just that." You, I climbed the stairs to the third floor, pausing at the first landing to peer down the hall on the chance Alicia was about she wasn't, and I continued up. I wasn't exactly eager to see her, but I thought if we happened to meet, I asked her whether she knew any of Cindy's friends, including Wally Brolin. I reached the third floor, unlocked Cindy's room, and began to gather whatever the police had left behind. Her computer and guitar were gone, of course, as well her backpack, but her clothing was still hanging in the closet and folded in the dresser drawers. I opened a plastic laundry bag I'd taken from the hotel and placed her clothing in it along with toiletries. After a struggle to open them, I emptied the dresser drawers and noticed that the roll of crackers and boxes of tea were gone. The police had taken Cindy's small storage device from the desk. I believe it's called a flash drive, as well as her song notebook, but had left the two unused spiral-bound books. I took those, the picture from home, and Emily's letter. The packing didn't take me more than 10 minutes. I looked around the empty room to see if I missed anything. Something was nagging at me, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. I rechecked the desk, pulling out the drawers to see if any papers had fallen behind them. and did the same with the dresser. I got down on my knees and peered under the bed, not even a dust bunny. I hoisted the full laundry bag, took another fast look around Cindy's space, and retreated to the hall to lock the door. Hi, are you related to Cindy? Said a voice behind me. I turned to see a pale young woman holding a canvas laundry bag, several inches shorter than I. She had straight black hair reaching to her shoulders, black bangs on her forehead, and eyes outlined in black pencil mark, making her appear not unlike the depictions of ancient Egyptians I've seen in museums. From Alicia's description, I assumed this was Heather Blackwood, the golf country singer. Hello, I said. I'm an old family friend of Cindy and her mother. Do you live here too? She introduced herself and confirmed my guess as to her identity. I stopped by to pick up Cindy's things for her. I said, Oh, is she moving out? I hesitated. Yes, at least for now, I said. You didn't know? Nobody tells me anything. I just got back from Jacksonville visiting the folks, so I haven't seen anyone yet. How long you were in Florida? I asked. Just a week. Enough time to remind me why I left home. She tilted her head and gave me a wry smile. I'm on my way to the laundromat. Do you want me to throw in some of Cindy's stuff of mine? I don't mind. That's very generous of you, I said. Perhaps another time. Where is she, by the way? She's staying at my hotel with me while I'm in town, I said, wanting to avoid a long conversation. Wow, lucky her. It's nice to get time and more posh surroundings, huh? Not precisely, but it's a long story, and I'm afraid I have to get back. I lifted the bag and headed for the stairs. Sure, didn't mean to keep you. You haven't, I said, feeling regretful that I was brushing her off. I turned at the last minute. I'm sorry to be in such a rush. Alicia will fill you in. I'm sure, I said. Ask her. Heather gave a half laugh, half snort. She who leaves no truth unmolded. You can never get anything reliable from her. But okay, I'll ask Alicia. Say hi to Cindy for me. As I walked down the stairs, it occurred to me that if she'd been absent from the rooming house for the past week, she couldn't have been the one I heard in the hall in the middle of the night, despite Alicia's claim. Who had it been then? I thought it had been Alicia, now I was convinced of it. When I reached the downstairs hall, Lenny Granger was coming out of her apartment. She changed into a blue denim skirt with a wide flare, a multicolored patchwork skirt, and cowboy boots. Shirt. On your way out? I asked. My co-writer is in from Rhode Island. We've booked a writing room at the Music Mill. He's got some song ideas, bless his Yankee heart. I hope you end up with a gold record, I said. Do you happen to know a musician named Wally Brolin? Her laugh was gentle. Sure I know Wally, she said. Wally the bear. He's a good man and a damn good guitar picker. Got a temper too that sometimes keeps him from getting the gigs he deserves. Why do you ask? Oh, just that he and Cindy were friends. A sly smile crossed Granger's face. Oh, Wally may not look like some leading man movie star, but the girls sure go for him. I suppose they like that macho spirit. He don't take no gruff from nobody. Hard to find a man like that these days. Interesting. He didn't strike me that way, I said. He seemed very laid back. Maybe he's a whatchamacallit, a multiple personality, she said. Anyway, glad to have met a famous writer like you. You tell your friend to keep her chin up and hope things work out. And if she wants to move back, just give me a ring. She called a taxi for me and I directed the driver to stop at the hotel, where I gave a bellman the bag of Cindy's clothes to deliver to the suite. Then we continued on to the music road to the offices of Marker and Woodson Music Publishers. Since my last visit to the scene of the murder, something had been circulating around in my brain that I couldn't pin down. But it came to me as I was packing up Cindy's things. Marker's office had two doors which, as Buddy had told me, was to allow him to come and go unnoticed. Buddy had also subtly indicated with a wink and a nod that the second door was used on those occasions when Marker was entertaining a female other than his wife, and Brolin too knew about this aspect of Marker's personal life. Not that I cared whether he was a man who arranged for trials in his office, but that second door was likely the one through which the killer had fled. Cindy had said she heard Marker arguing with someone on the phone, but perhaps he'd been talking to that someone in person. Of course, conjuring this scenario didn't help identify who'd been in the office while Cindy waited outside in the reception area, but it was a place to start. I was taking a chance that the office would be open since the service for Marker had only been only that morning, but sure enough, when I stepped out of the elevator, ahead of me was a woman seated behind a desk in the reception area of Marker and Whitson. She was in her mid-50s with short, raspy hair, a sallow complexion, and thin lips set in a hard line. Narrow reading glasses were balanced on the tip of her pug nose. I wasn't certain if this was Marker's secretary, Edwana Anderson, but Buddy had referred to as an adult axe, but I could see how a man his age might describe this woman that way. Marker had wanted someone more attractive in her position, and while I objected to the idea of discarding an efficient and loyal worker because time and perhaps genetics had not been kind to her, this lady certainly made no effort to be welcoming. A smile would have gone a long way to overcoming her deficiencies. May I help you? She asked, barely looking up from some papers on her desk. Yes, I hope you will. My name is Jessica Fletcher. A ray of recognition crossed her face. Oh, yes, the writer. I read about you in the paper this morning. She removed her glasses and folded her hands on the desk. And you're Edwana Anderson, I pursued. She didn't reply, simply stared at me. Well, I'm, as you probably learned by reading the article, I'm working with the defense team for Miss Gable. Yes, I did read that. Frankly, Mrs. Fletcher, I'm not of a mind to cooperate with anyone looking to get that young woman off the hook. Even if she's innocent? But she's not. I read the accounts of Mr. Marker's death. She's obviously as guilty as sin, if you'll pardon my use of a cliche. Pardon granted, I said, but I strongly believe that Cindy has been wrongly accused. Just because you believe it doesn't make it so, she sniffed. That's true, I said, but it would be a travesty of justice if a thorough investigation were not conducted, taking into account the history of the victim and all the people who knew who might have had issues with him. Everything is not always as clear-cut as it appears initially. Are you questioning the authorities? Nashville has an excellent police department. I absolutely agree, I said, but that doesn't mean they can't use a little extra help from time to time. I'm simply hoping to point out possibilities they may not have considered. Well, what do you want from me? I understand on the night Mr. Marker was attacked. You saw Cindy coming into the building when you were leaving for the day. That's what I told the police. So I heard. Had Cindy made her appointment to see Mr. Marker through you? She did not have an appointment. Was anyone with Mr. Marker when you left the office? No. At least not that you knew about, I said. But Mr. Marker didn't always tell you about everyone he saw in his office, did he? I don't know where you're getting your information, she said. I stopped in the other day and had a brief conversation with Mr. Whitson and with Buddy. She rolled her eyes at the mention of Buddy. Really? She said in a stern, hearty voice. I don't have time to deal in innuendo and rumor. Is there something specific you want? As a matter of fact, there is. I wanted to take another look at Mr. Marker's office. May I ask why? I like to examine the other door in the office and where it leads to. And if I say no, she said with a smirk, I decided I could be just as obstinate. I straightened up and said in my best school teacher voice, you should know I'm not only working on Miss Gabriel's defense attorney. I'm discussing the case with the lead detective, Detective Biddle. You only delayed me for a short time. I'm sure I can arrange for a warrant to allow me to take another look at the crime scene. I had no idea whether I could do as threatened, but it seemed an obvious thing to say. It is obviously has some effect because her expression changed from defiance to something closer to reflection. But Mr. Winston isn't in right now, she said, a blatant attempt to shift the direction of the conversation. That's perfect, I said. I won't take up a lot of your time. I need to spend only a few minutes in his office. There's an emergency exit outside that door. Isn't that right? That's correct. Where does it lead to? To the parking lot in the back. And do people use that entrance to come into the building from the parking lot? No, the door is locked. Everyone comes in the front entrance. If the door is locked, then that implies a key. Can people with a key use that door? Her sigh was dismissive. I suppose so, she said, if they have one. Do you have one? I asked. Yes, but I don't use it. I come in and out the front entrance like everyone else. But if you have the key, I assume that others may also have a key. Perhaps Mr. Marker gave a key to someone who could then have access to a second door from the parking lot. I wouldn't know about that. Just an assumption, I said pleasantly. Now may I see the office again? Another sight, more prolonged this time. Mr. Whitson won't be pleased, I said conspiratorially. He never even has to know. She sat up from her chair with exaggerated effort and came around the desk. She was a tall, solidly built woman whose full dress reached to her calves and came high up around her neck. She led the way into Marcus' office, which now belonged to his business partner, Louis Whitson, was gaining a larger, more elaborately furnished office, and with a second door molded enough to kill. The question crossed my mind. Marcus' partner had not wasted any time taking over the larger office, and I wondered if there were others who would have a claim on the partnership. If Whitson was marketing his territory, so to speak, then too Mr. Whitson may have had a lot more to gain by Marcus' death than simply a more impressive office, or could Juana Anderson have secured her position by ridding herself of a boss who clearly wanted to fire her? I slipped into my what-if frame of mind, which opened the door to any and all possibilities without self-censoring. The office looked markedly different than the last time I seen it, which was only 2 days ago. The rose-colored plush carpet was new. Marcus' desk was gone, replaced by a large glass one. Whitson's high back chair was red, as opposed to the black tufted seat I seen in the office before. An overstuffed green leather couch substituted for the long gray sofa, and where the glass coffee table had stood, there was now a series of 3 small tables, not one of them strong enough to support an exuberant dancer when the latest M&W talent topped the charts. I glanced at the walls. Many of the same photographs of their more famous clients were still there, augmented by a grouping of color shots that appeared to be family photos. Marilyn Marker wasn't in those pictures. They must have been Weston's family. I see that you changed the decor, I said. Mr. Whitson wanted the office to reflect himself, and not remind us of his partner's dementia, I added. Satisfied? She asked. Almost, I said, going to the second door and opened it. It was unlocked. I stepped into the hallway and looked at the fire door. And these stairs led to the parking lot, I said to myself. I already told you that, she said, making a point of looking at her watch. Back inside, I stood in the center of the room and tried to envision the murder scene. I saw someone I wasn't sure whether it was a man or a woman arguing with Marco over something. A business deal gone sour, money promised and unpaid. A vow broken, a jealous competitor, a betrayal of a lover or a wife. All possible motivations were on the table at this point. I turned and looked at the first door to the office, the one through which we just passed. I could see Cindy, frustrated and impatient, wait in the reception area to see the man she felt had taken away her best chance for stardom, hoping to change his mind. She comes through that door and looks for him, doesn't see anyone. She spots the music award on the floor, picks it up to place it on the corner of his desk, puts it there, realizes there's blood on it, wipes her hand on her jeans and sees him lying face down on the floor, behind the desk, not moving. She panics, turns and runs from the office into the arms of the building security guard, who pushes her down into the chair in the reception area. While he goes into the office to see what has happened, she panics even more and races down the main stairs, out into the street, and tries to think of a safe haven where she can stay until she decides what to do next. I wiped that vision from my mind and looked at the second door again. Cindy had heard Marco arguing with someone while she waited to see him. No, that wasn't entirely accurate. She thought he was on the phone, which meant she hadn't heard a second voice. Was he on the phone? Possibly not. Maybe he was talking in person with the man or woman who had murdered him. I made a mental note to encourage Cindy to try and remember whether she even ever heard a second voice through the closed office door. You had enough time to do whatever it is you're doing, Miss Anderson, better known as Eddie said sharply. Yes, and thank you for your courtesy, I said. I think I'll leave by the fire door if that's all right with you. Is it along? Should be. I told Buddy it should be, but he functions in his own little world. They all do. They? His type. Suit yourself, goodbye. She waited until I left by the second door and locked it behind me. I opened the fire door and peered down the steps, seeing in my mind someone rushing down the steps, realizing what he or she had just done, desperate to flee the premises. I slowly descended, reached the steel fire door, which opened from the inside with a bar release. I pressed it and the door swung open easily. I stepped outside and looked around. The parking lot was half full. The door slammed closed behind me. I turned and tried to reopen it, but there was no latch on the outside, only a pull and a keyhole. Clearly anyone who would enter the building through this door needed a key. Market and Woodson might require their staff, who parked in the lot, to walk around the building and come in the front entrance. But there could be a select few who were given the key and used this door, even people who didn't work in the building. I peered up into a pewter sky that promised rain and followed a sidewalk around to the front of the building, where I entered again. A guard who hadn't been there earlier was standing at the counter, a burly man with a paunch hanging over his black leather belt. He wore a gray uniform with a shoulder patch on which the letters SMSS were superimposed over an embroidered image of a mountaintop. Detective Biddle had said the guard who caught Cindy was from the Smoky Mountain Security Services. By any chance, are you Cleveland Morgan? I asked. He straightened. Yes, ma'am. How can I help you? I didn't want to confess that I was looking to find evidence to exonerate Cindy, especially to the man who had been hauled for catching a killer. Instead, I put on my best impression of a gossipy biddy and batted the lashes at him. I've read about you in a Tennessean, I said, slapping the counter. Terrible shame about Mr. Marker. I heard you were the one who found him, and the girl. He smiled. Yes, ma'am. Got her red-handed, in fact, really red-handed. Their blood was still on her fingers, told the police that. Gave them a good description, that's how they found her. Took a couple days, though. I should have locked her up good so she couldn't run. Still riled about that. No need at all. My goodness, you're a hero. Your family must be so proud. Yes, ma'am, they are. It's got to be so difficult trying to guard this place, what with people coming and going all the time and using the back door to the parking lot. You got that right. That back door is a pain in my butt, if you'll excuse my French. Of course, I said, injecting my voice with sympathy. When she escaped, did the killer run out that back door? No, ma'am. She sneaked out the front when I was calling the cops. How can you be so sure she went out the front? Easy. Mr. Marker, he had a second door in his office, right outside them stairs leading to the parking lot. If she gone out that way, I know. And you could see right through his door. Is it glass? No, ma'am, it's wood, but it was open. Of course. How silly of me. If I'd seen her, I would have caught her again. She wouldn't get away from me then. I left the building and paused on the sidewalk. peering down the street in hopes of spotting a taxi. As I stood there, someone in a shiny silver Jaguar with tinted windows pulled up next to a fire hydrant and turned off the engine. Louis Whitson emerged from the passenger door and walked around the car to the driver's side. He held out his hand to the driver. A long black stocking leg appeared, and then the rest of the woman in black. It was Marilyn Marker. Whitson's back was to me, but Marilyn scanned my face, and there was a fleeting hint of recognition in her eyes. However, she said nothing. Whitson took her elbow and hurried into the building. I looked at my watch. It was almost 3. How interesting, I thought, that the widow of the victim and his business partner arrived together. And what business could they need to address at the office on the day of Marketer's memorial service? Markers. An empty cab turned the corner. I held it and asked the driver to take me to Central Police Headquarters if Detective Bitter was serious about meeting two. As he put it, compared notes. I didn't want to waste any time taking him up on it. Like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Bye.